Welcome back live from Money 2020 here in Europe, day 2. I'm Scarlett Sieber, your Chief Strategy and Growth Officer, and I got a great guest for you in Oded Salomy from the Bank of Israel. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Day 2, but you and I have, this is actually day 3 in some ways because we've seen each other since the first day. So why, you and I talked about this a bit offline. I want to take some of that conversation to the larger Money 2020 audience. What are you doing here? What is the Bank of Israel doing here? Why are you here? What are you excited about?
So we're a central bank, and it is not that common for central bankers to come to a business conference like Money 2020. I was heartened to see that there are several other central banks here, and we actually had our own little offsite dinner to compare notes. And I think what we have in common is we're looking at 2 things. One are kind of technology and product trends that we need to understand from a regulatory perspective. But the second is what I might call market development. So we tend to come from smaller markets where some of the non-bank fintechs, financial entities are not necessarily going to launch first, and yet we would like our consumers and our businesses to get some of the benefits that non-fintechs bring to market, faster, more innovative, perhaps more cost efficient. And so we're also reaching out and allowing them to reach out to us because we're here in order to explain how our market works and what the plan of entry could be, maybe to validate some of their thinking.
I think that's such an interesting thing, small market to big market, and the validation of thinking. When you think about Israel and some of the things maybe where you are leading from, what are the first things that come to mind from a fintech and tech perspective?
So I think in fintech, regulation is front and center always. And a lot of what we found is that the two-way communication is not as strong as it could be. So when fintechs hear that I'm a central banker, they run the other way. Yeah. And thanks to my prior career, which was not a regulator, I'm able to say, guys, you've got my phone number and my WhatsApp, you can write me and it's okay, and we're not going to attack you. And I think the reverse is true as well. Regulators tend to view innovation as a risk to be managed rather than an opportunity for the market. That is changing. I think we're all the regulators worldwide in the financial space are recognizing that innovation will be the new way of performing financial services or providing financial services. So let's kind of view this as an opportunity as well as a risk, and let's balance the two.
That's such an important way of thinking. I spent a fair amount of time with Yelena McWilliams, a dear friend of mine, the former chairman of the FDIC, and she was talking about a lot of the similar things, and a lot of the conversations have to be between regulators. So even hearing that you had dinners with the other regulators from around the world, that's where a lot of the magic happens, because it's like you get behind closed doors, you say, what's actually working for you? Because you could have the best laid out plans, but it really comes into execution and getting over some of those hurdles. So it's really about that collaboration piece. But when you think about your time here, I know you've looked at a lot of sessions, had some great conversations. What have you been seeing that you've been talking about behind closed doors that have been coming to life throughout the content and throughout conversations you've been having throughout the course of the 3 days here so far?
So I would say a few things. Let's talk about crypto, merchants, and cross-border payments. So all 3 of those categories are quite interesting. In the crypto space, I think we're seeing across the board, and we see this in all the sessions, that some of the traditional financial institutions as well as regulators are beginning to accept crypto as something that's here to stay. Questions around whether it's a volatile financial asset, is it a payment method or means of payment? We tend to view it as a volatile asset. I think it will continue being that way. But to view it as something that is going to maybe come to market in a decade is no longer relevant. And so as regulators, we need to cope with that reality as, I think, traditional financial institutions, and that's kind of playing out in all the sessions on digital assets and cryptocurrencies. Cross-border payments. So more in the offline discussions, we're seeing a lot of new initiatives by both traditional and new players that have established kind of a global footprint in moving money around the world, in using traditional methods with correspondent banking and using all kinds of new methods. And I was very heartened to actually have been approached by a number of these initiatives to ask, hey, what can we do in the Israel market, whether it's for payouts or for pay-ins, whether it's on a faster payments platform and an ACH platform or some other means. So that's an active conversation that we're having, very much responding to the players that are here, but it aligns with our national agenda. And then the third one that I said was merchants.
Yep.
So we're seeing specifically e-commerce merchants entering financial services. They tend to do that through payments first. There was a presentation by Daniel Markovitz from Booking.com about what they're doing, and it's beginning to happen in our market. And I think this is a space where perhaps as regulators we could lead rather than react to what's already happened, because we've identified this as a trend and we need to understand, is this something we need to be involved with? Certainly we need to understand it. I think it's still early days, but I think we're going to be seeing financial services coming from spaces that are completely new. Maybe one other point I should mention, there was I think it was a fireside chat with Google Cloud and Deutsche Bank just an hour or two ago.
Yeah.
And Deutsche Bank made an interesting statement that while traditionally they have worked with the CFOs of their corporate clients, now they're working with multiple divisions to help them embed financial services in the customer experience, no matter what type of service they provide. And that kind of aligns. So we're going to be seeing financial services coming from all different industries.
You know that I was telling you offline, I could not agree more, and it's quite interesting because when I wrote a book about it, that's how much I agree with you. But when
I've got the book, I'm going to read it.
When I'd love to know your thoughts on it. But when my co-author and I were thinking about what we wanted to write about, embedded finance was still quite an early term, and we got a lot of pushback from the broader industry. Not obviously in our world of fintech, but like, is this a niche? Does this actually apply to anyone who's not, financial services? And the answer was absolutely yes. And it's so amazing. I've just been going in and watching some of the sessions, just sitting in for a few minutes, and the more I hear embedded finance, it's everywhere. And it goes to what you said though, it's about seamlessly integrating into that experience. And yes, it's great for the end consumer or small business, but really it can be monumental for the merchants.
Yeah.
And there's so much there that there's a lot of opportunities.
So I think what we're seeing on a lot of the marketplaces is a commoditization of services. If it's mobility or hospitality or marketplaces for whatever, freelance services, and they're looking for new sources of revenue, and if they can take all the payment data and they see all these transactions moving back and forth, they could convert that into smart underwriting for credit, and suddenly they have a new source of revenue that really does not require a balance sheet.
All I know is I'm sitting here and I've had dozens of conversations, thousands of conversations over the time, and to hear a regular talk about wanting to be on the forefront and lead and not be reactionary is just so exciting. It's exhilarating. It's not super normal. It's great that the Bank of Israel brought you in, who actually has that fintech background, to come in and really help shake things up. So much looking forward to see what's coming next. And you got some big plans for the country, big plans for the future of fintech, and we'll be here for joining a lot of that.
Thank you, and the door's wide open. If there are global fintechs looking at the Israel market, please write us.
You heard it from Oded, folks. They're interested in seeing more fintechs come on over, so he'll be here tomorrow? You're still here tomorrow?
Absolutely, yes.
If you're watching this, if it gets out before then, come here tomorrow. Otherwise, you can find him online. He is very easy to access. Oded Salomy, Bank of Israel.
Thank you.
Thank you all.